You're watching UATV News. My name is Ina Kosinska. Good evening. Deterrence of Russian aggression against Ukraine. This was the topic of conversation between the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken with foreign ministers of France, Germany and the United Kingdom. The negotiations were held via the telephone. The parties agreed on a joint response in the case of further aggression by Russia. The corresponding statement was published on the website of the U.S. Department of State.
They discussed the importance of continued coordination to deter any further Russian aggression against Ukraine and affirmed the consensus among allies and partners to impose massive consequences and severe costs on Russia for such actions. They reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine's independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity. From the readout by the U.S. Department of State spokesperson Ned Price on the website of the U.S. Department of State.
The situation on the Russian-Ukrainian border will become a topic of today's discussion between presidents of the United States and Russia. The telephone conversation will take place tonight. It was initiated by the Russian side. This will be already the second talk of the presidents this month. The previous video conference between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin was held on December 7. Then the leaders discussed the situation in Ukraine and issues of strategic stability. The UK and NATO allies are ready to inflict serious damage to the Russian economy by introducing coordinated sanctions in the event of further invasion of Ukraine. In Ukraine, this was stated by British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss in an article for the Ukrainian Европейская Правда website. London does not accept the Kremlin's attempts to blame Ukraine or the North Atlantic Alliance for the current situation. The United Kingdom and its allies are on the side of Ukraine in the face of unprovoked and unexplained build-up of troops by Russia on the territory of Ukraine and along its borders. Britain and other NATO members have made it clear that any further military incursion in Ukraine would be a strategic mistake. Possible military invasion of Russian troops into Ukrainian territory poses a threat to security of not only Ukraine, but the entire Europe in general. This was stated by the President of Estonia, Karis, in Tallinn, during a meeting with the ambassador of the European Union to Ukraine, Mati Masikas. Estonia will continue to provide assistance to Kyiv both on a bilateral basis and through various EU initiatives, said the President of Estonia. He plans to visit Ukraine next year, the press service of the head of state said.
Despite the ongoing hostilities in eastern Ukraine, Ukrainians remain supporters of reforms, continuing their efforts to integrate into the European Union. This is a country where democratic values are appreciated. Estonia supports Ukraine's aspirations to join the European Union, as well as the right of Ukrainians to decide whatever unions they want to join. It is important to continue to support the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. Karis, President of Estonia.
The State Border Strengthening Project is now being actively developed by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. They've already sent a draft bill on simplifying the allocation of land under the jurisdiction of the Border Service to the Office of the President. The agency expects that the document will be supported both in the Office of the President and in the Parliament. And next year, construction will begin primarily on the border with Russia and Belarus. Earlier, the Ministry of Internal Affairs identified 10 sections of the border with total length of 270 kilometers through which migrants can penetrate into the territory of Ukraine.
Most land plots along the Ukrainian-Belarusian border are not formalized behind the border guards, which means that it is impossible to build any protective structures there, even with the funds allocated. The budget includes the initial amount for the design of the entire state border, which is already being carried out before the start of the construction works. Allocation of these lands in 2022 should go in parallel with the law.
The fourth victim of a fire in an intensive care unit of the Kosiv district hospital in western Ukrainian Ivano-Frankivsk region. The assistant nurse who suffered severe burns died. A doctor remains in the hospital. His body is burned by 20% and there is no threat to his life. Another victim, a 58-year-old nurse, was taken to the Kyiv burn center by sanitary aviation the day before. The fire occurred on Tuesday. The preliminary reason is a memorial candle which was lit by one of the doctors after the patient's death. The fire broke out instantly. The air was overflowed with oxygen from the operation of 5 oxygen cylinders. 3 people died at once. The criminal investigation was initiated and the law enforcement are going to check the Ukrainian hospitals.
Прийнято рішення повністю зробити облік
It was decided to thoroughly check the number and availability of the appropriate firefighting equipment in the intensive care units of district hospitals throughout the country. First of all, checks will be held, and then we'll carry out explanatory work together with the Ministry of Health and the State Emergency Service, respectively, in order to prevent such events.
Ukraine does not and will not recognize the Russian vaccine Sputnik V. This was stated by Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Reintegration of the Temporarily Occupied Territories of Ukraine, Irina Vereshchuk. According to her, all our citizens can be vaccinated with vaccines recognized by the World Health Organization. To remind, earlier it was reported that Russia demands Ukraine to recognize the Sputnik V drug as well as a certificate of vaccination with it for the residents of certain areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions uncontrolled by Ukrainian government, in exchange for unblocking the work of checkpoints along the contact line by illegal armed groups. We have the opportunity to administer vaccines to our citizens at the checkpoints. They can come, for example, to Chunhar and Kalanchak checkpoints and in Stanitsa Luhanska for vaccination. The state of Ukraine will provide them with the globally recognized vaccines. Food, shower and clean clothes, such requests are made to Odessa charitable foundations and communal heating stations every day by local homeless people. There is no way to help everyone with new clothes. To solve this problem, a social laundry was opened in the city where people without a definite place of residence can wash their things for free. Our correspondents will tell you the details.
Serhiy found himself on the street 6 years ago. He tells that after the death of his mother, his relatives sold the apartment, and he, as the only son, was deprived of inheritance rights. Since then, he has been living in the street. Not to freeze in winter, the man comes to the social center for homeless people every day.
Please blow into the tube as usual. Let's see the result. Super, you are sober.
This check is carried out for each visitor. If a person is sober, one can wash clothes and take a shower. Well, first of all, sometimes it happens that size of clothes doesn't suit, or I have clothes but nowhere to wash them. But now, thanks to volunteers, a boiler and washing machines were installed, so one can come to quickly wash some things. They say in the charitable foundation that there are not enough new clothes for the homeless. Moreover, often the clothes do not fit everyone in size. Therefore, they decided to equip an industrial laundry.
There's a big problem with new clothes. Every day we have about 15 or more people coming to our bath, and we have to provide them with everything necessary.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland helped to equip a social laundry in the city. 2 industrial washing machines and dryers were installed there. This is advantageous both from an economic point of view and environmental one. For an hour while people bathe and get dry, their clothes are washed and then dried as well. And after all, one can put on one's clothes clean and leave the center in clean clothes. There are now 2 communal heating points for the homeless in the city, but they cannot serve everyone. Therefore, the help of volunteers is much needed.
The city opened 2 shelters. We have a shelter for men on Tsiolkovsky Street and a shelter for women on Baltska Road, which can host 150 people at a time. Whatever assistance we provide, we could have not been able to do it and resolve those issues without the participation of charitable foundations, without the participation of the public.
In the coming days, frosts are expected in Odessa. Therefore, the city plans to open additional mobile heating points. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Bohdan Sivko, UATV News.
10,000 law enforcement officers will ensure safety of Ukrainians during New Year celebrations. 2,000 of them will be the servicemen of the National Guard of Ukraine. According to head of the National Police Igor Klimenko, festive events on New Year's Eve are planned in at least 1,000 cities and towns.
People will move around in large groups, there will be families, and therefore our number one task is to ensure road safety and safety of people, taking into account, of course, the weather conditions that are today, will be tomorrow and the following week. A big problem is the use of firecrackers, fireworks and installations. Every year, every holiday season, we record a large number of emergencies related to the injury of our citizens.
The 3rd level of avalanche alert is kept in the mountains of Transcarpathian region in western Ukraine. They ask everyone, especially tourists in the State of Emergency Service of Ukraine, to register before going out to the mountains. It is necessary to register online on the website on the service. One needs to indicate contact information, date and the route. If at the time specified during registration the tourist does not get in touch, this will be a signal for rescuers.
We, rescuers of the Transcarpathian region, appeal to tourists who plan to travel to the mountain. Please get free registration in rescue departments and get some more detailed information about weather conditions, avalanche situation in the mountains, and the right routes to choose.
The largest amber stone in Ukraine was found in the Rivne region in northwestern Ukraine. It weighs more than 5 kilograms and was mined at the Volodymyrets-Hidny deposit. Experts from the State Gemological Center of Ukraine say that this is a great rarity. The find is one of the 10 largest amber stones in the world, and the world's largest nugget weighing more than 9 kilograms is kept in the Natural History Museum in Berlin. Big restoration, tourist development and media projects. Ukrainian films were presented at the most prestigious world festivals, and the collection of Scythian gold is very likely to return to Ukrainian museums soon. UATV News starts summarizing the results of the year in various spheres of the country's life. What was 2021 for Ukrainian culture? Our correspondents will tell.
The Leonid Kogan Philharmonic in Dnipro is one of almost 6 objects which got a second wind this year thanks to the Great Restoration program. Soon the building reopens with a new stage, improved acoustics, renewed interiors of the auditorium and the foyer.
We hope that thanks to the Great Restoration program, we will have a new tourist route across the most attractive sites of the Dnipropetrovsk region, which we are proud of. This building is an architectural monument of a nationwide scale. It was built in the early 20th century.
Odessa will see the restoration of 3 objects: the Art Museum, the Museum of Western and Eastern Art, and the Regional Philharmonic. Preliminary works are already underway there. They are strengthening the facades and removing emergency facade elements. As of now, we have held tenders for renovating the Abaza Palace and the Art Museum. The issue is also being considered, and a tender has been announced for restoration of the Navy Museum. The Regional Council is the customer there. The Great Restoration project comprises of 57 cultural objects this year, while they plan to restore 100 more in 2022. Some $100 million were allocated from the state budget. At the same time, the Ministry of Culture urges communities' authorities to engage more actively in the process. They are ready to provide subventions to local budgets. They are ready to change the surrounding infrastructure for that. To be comfortable in, for example, castles. That is, for the community, investing 1 hryvnia in the restoration turns into lots of hryvnias brought by the arriving tourists and visitors. This year, Ukraine was also elected a member of the UNESCO Committee for the Protection of Cultural Heritage in the event of an armed conflict. The status will help the country resist Russia's constant attempts to appropriate Ukrainian cultural objects. Advocacy and the fact that we are constantly working on documents to raise this issue, this is one thing. But our most important task is to show the concrete result, to show the condition of cultural heritage sites in the temporarily occupied territories. According to the decision of the Amsterdam Court of Appeal, the Scythian gold returns to Ukraine. The dispute over the exhibition of historical values from 4 museums of the occupied Crimea lasted for almost 8 years, and the traditional Crimean Tatar ornament Ornak was officially included into the UNESCO World Cultural Heritage List. Multiple projects aiming to make Crimean Tatar culture known across the country and throughout the world took place this year. The Shlach Yol project reflects the key elements of the Crimean Tatar identity and significant moments in the history of the indigenous people of Crimea. The Crimean House has already presented a unique collection of 200 exhibits by native masters. Next year, the Crimean Tatar Mansion will be opened in the Pyrohiv Museum of Ethnic Architecture and Life. Next year, we will implement a large part of the project. This will be a modern architectural view of the Crimean Tatar Mansion based on historical data. An interactive museum where masters of traditional Crimean Tatar crafts and cuisine will represent the cultural diversity of Crimea. A large-scale project of cultural initiatives Dialogue in the Language of Art has become a striking event in Donbass. These are festivals, book exhibitions and cooking master classes. They took place in Mariupol, which has won the title of Ukraine's Big Capital of Culture 2021. And within the frameworks of the festival From Country to Ukraine, the project Inspiration of the East was implemented as well. 11 popular performers, including Eurovision winner-singer Jamala, shot clips in 11 eastern cities affected by hostilities, namely in Slovyansk, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut, Drushkovka, Dobropilla, Mirnograd, Stanitsa Luhanska, Starobilsk, Shastya and Mariupol.
багато сну і міста, як мости. Я люблю цей світ, бо є у ньому ти.
79 movies came out of studios with government support. Domestic production was highly admired at international film festivals in Cannes, Venice, Berlin, and at the American Sundance. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Svetlana Sich, UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. Thank you for staying with the UATV channel. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.